Kotler is through the visuals behind us, One Winter Story, which she made with Sally Lumber. 2005? That's 2006. We thought we would change the visual climate in here a little bit. So, everybody can hear me all right? All right. So I wanted to begin first by just thanking mainly the Bay Area surf communities and the women's surf communities of Santa Cruz in particular, because over a 10-year time they gave me an enormous amount of their attention and cooperation for this project, which would have had no material had they not done that. So I wanted to thank them, and I also wanted to just start out by saying there's a lot of good books out there about women in surfing that have helped this one along. So I wanted to just acknowledge them and also acknowledge the work of Duane, who maybe has gone, Tom Farber, and Matt Warshaw, all of whom have been important to my work, and I cite them in this book. So my book is not a book like that. It's a scholarly book, but it's also written for non-scholars, and at least one person here has read the first 2 pages, and she said she could understand it. So that's good. I thought I would frame for you the big picture, and then I would read. In terms of the big picture, as you may know, scholarly books don't typically take on a contemporary topic and run with it. What scholarly books do is they put a topic into conversation with a set of questions that people in a particular field find interesting or important. The field I wanted to put surf subcultures, girls surfing, into conversation with was the field of globalization studies. As somebody who grew up around surfing in the 70s and 80s, and then noticed in the 90s a change that surfing was emerging as a new kind of political and economic animal, I thought about surfing in relation to globalization. The images by the 90s were suddenly not local anymore, but they were all around us, all over the world in a new kind of way. They could be found in places that already had a long history with surfing, like Bali or J-Bay, but surfing was also making new homes, traveling the world with a new kind of identity that was less territorial, more green, more girl-friendly, and definitely more commercial. What I'm saying, and the book develops this idea, is that surfing since the 90s is a case study in globalization. In particular, I'm interested in the girl-friendly face that's plastered all over global surfing, and thinking about it alongside female buyers and their importance to the surf industry as a strategy for making profits. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward here to some work I did over many years in Sayulita, Mexico. I'm sure many of you know Sayulita. Globalization has created new surf spots, as I said before, and Sayulita is definitely one of them. One of the businesses that makes Sayulita a surf haven in this present moment is Las Olas Surf Safaris for women, which I'm sure a lot of you know. In barely a decade, because of Las Olas, Sayulita has become that rare place in the world where there are just lots of women walking on the street, balancing longboards on top of their heads. Most of them are U.S. nationals, and most of them are from Northern California. Only in the last 5 years or so have Mexican women started surfing in Sayulita, and the presence of Mexican girls surfing is just beginning. So I wanted to read from the book a part of an ethnography I did with some of these Mexican girls. What I was trying to do in that part of the book was to think about how globalization is arriving through surf industry in Sayulita. So the setup scene here is that I've been trying to talk to these 4 girls. One of them wants nothing to do with me, so the other 3 I'm talking to. Okay, Maria and her crew march down very different paths of everyday surfing femininity. Maria is the best of the crew in terms of being a surfer. She is a rebel who knows how not to talk to authority, so she utterly ignores me. So it will be me with the other 3 girls without Maria, who stand in the middle of a taqueria on the beach and have this kind of informal interview. They're eager to talk. Please, somebody wants to know what they think, but they're also shy, laughing. Shasha covers her mouth with her hand, and I realize she has braces. The only person I've seen in Sayulita with braces. I ask ages, birthplaces, how long the people have been serving. Ixta and Maria, two of the girls, are both 14. They're born in Sayulita. They both come from Ejido families. Shasha is 12. She's very tall. She says she's born in California. I ask her where. She says she doesn't know. I say, you don't know your birthplace? Ixta speaks up for her. She says Santa Barbara, but Shasha says, no, actually she's not sure. But you live here now, I clarify. And she says, yes, for most of the year, but I also travel a lot. Lola, the youngest girl at 9, was born in Paris. She now lives in Sayulita permanently. Do you feel, as surfers, I ask, that you're different from other local girls your own age? This gets an emphatic yes. How, I want to know. I'm fishing. Is it with boys or your parents? All of them talk at once. They create a group statement to the effect that they are less interested in spending time in front of the mirror and more interested in nature, what is going on outside of Sayulita, and what they call contaminación. Whenever they see trash on the beach, they clean it up. Anything in the water, like bottles, they swim over to it and get it, come out and throw it in the trash bins. What are your opinions about tourism in Sayulita? Might there ever be a time when there are too many Americans? In a single voice, they venture there already are too many tourists. I think many of us feel that way too. Ixta points out the constant new construction, and the jungle is being cut down to make way. They think more jobs is a good thing for Sayulita, but some of the Americans, and they use this word, are racists. They treat people badly because they have a lot of money. But in spite of it all, they say, yes, in recent times they do believe women and girls have more opportunities. What plans do you have for yourself as girls, I follow up? What kind of dreams? 9-year-old Lola laughs, shrugs her shoulders, dances, but Ixta, who's a teenager, offers a response in a serious kind of tone. See the world, she says, surf. I move to the trickiest part of the conversation about relations between Americans and Mexicans. Are they close? Do they lead separate lives in Sayulita? It seems to me, I tell them, the older women lead pretty separate lives, the Americans and Mexicans. Do they think girls are separate? They say they don't want to say separate, but maybe different. Well, okay, I say, but how? Do the three of you, for example, have American friends? Yes, yes, they say easily. And how are those friendships? Ixta declares she has a very close friend at school, a boy who calls himself a Mexican, but to her, he is an American. I know who this boy is. He's lived in Sayulita since the age of 2 or 3. He's now 14. On an earlier trip here in 2002, I remember interviewing his mom, who talked a lot about the fact he was calling himself a Mexican national, and she didn't know how to feel about that. His older brother, who is 17, currently ranks as one of Mexico's national surf champions, and he does not surf as a U.S. national on the U.S. team. But Ixta is not persuaded by either of these brothers' claims on Mexican nationality. When I comment that the boy speaks English with a heavy Spanish accent, whereas his Spanish seems native, she's startled and takes the sentence new information, but clearly tensions exist. As the conversation goes on, Lola, her brother passes by on the street. Anybody watching the local boy's hot dog has noticed him in the surf. He is small like his sister. He has white blonde hair. One might easily place him as a Californian. He calls out something to his sister, a passing greeting from the street to the restaurant, and she answers him. This is all in French. The girls take this as a matter of course. Shasha seizes on this apparent opening as an occasion to say more about herself. The whole animated time we have talked together in Spanish, she has stayed quieter than the others. Now she turns to me and without transition talks in everyday adolescent English. My jaw drops. She is keeping quiet, she apologizes, because she thinks of herself as also an American. When we talk about Americans, she feels she should listen and not speak. She travels so much everywhere, she says, that she doesn't call any place home. Who are the locals of the surfistas at Sayulita? Who are the Mexicans? Who are the Americans? The many others. In this ethnographic context, it may be easier to answer the question when it comes to adults. It's much harder to do the math with young people like the boy who moved from Seattle to Sayulita at age 2, or Shasha, who moves continually, or like Lola, who lives permanently now in Mexico while maintaining her ties to Paris. Obviously, a lot of forces beyond surf culture have produced this moment of contact between girls from different parts of the world. At the same time, I don't think we can overestimate the power of global-friendly surf culture to promote the kinds of transnational forms of girlhood that are seen here now in this small village where only 5 years earlier no such presence existed.